Look, we live in a very, very interesting world where Bitcoin is now transitioning into a mainstream asset. And at the same time, you're going to see people who just don't understand it, come from a very, very traditional mindset. And they're going to tell you to back out of Bitcoin because it is viscerally scary for them, because Bitcoin belongs in the risk off, the risk on bucket, so far on the risk on curve that they feel nervous when you tell them that you own Bitcoin. You might know some people like this. And today I want to react to Caleb Hammer, I believe that's his name, a video. I think he runs a podcast. It's quite a big podcast from what limited I've watched, on telling people how to basically manage their finances and align them to a safe, steady growth portfolio. And part of me, I watched this initially and I was infuriated. I had an unlimited amount of rage for Caleb, but I watched it back a couple times and I completely understand where he's coming from here. But we're going to watch this and then I'm going to give you my true honest opinion on what I think about Caleb's opinion here about Bitcoin. So let's watch this right now, what he says to this young lady.
What other investments do you have?
Bitcoin.
How much?
Well, I invested over 3,000, but right now it's down
to hey, we've recently had a bounce.
Yeah, it started to go up, which is good.
Yeah, what's it at?
So there's a lesson here, right? She said it started to go up, which is good. Oh, woo! Thank God it started to go up. So that demonstrates to you that she doesn't understand what she bought, right? She hasn't done the work enough to understand what she actually bought. Now let's see what he says.
1888.
Cool.
It's a $3,000 investment, and it's currently worth $1,800.
Sell it.
What?
Put it towards the next car. Yep.
So he immediately tells her to sell it. Why? Because he's perceiving this like Bitcoin is a full risk-on asset, furthest on the risk-on curve. And because, again, he hasn't done his homework either, right? And it will come out in a second.
This could go up.
It could.
It's over 3,000 I invested.
It could. I'll tell you what, 100.
So her philosophy for investing in Bitcoin is not because she understands the asset and she's done the work, but because this could go up, right? And that's very important to understand the psychology here.
100% will happen no matter what. These credit cards will keep killing you. Doesn't matter. Get back into that bullshit if you want to in the future. Right now, you are taken care of.
So firstly, he called it bullshit, which means he doesn't understand what it is. She doesn't understand what it is. What he's looking at is what he's got in front of him, which is the lineup of credit cards that she's obviously taken, and she's got bills and those payments coming out. And he wants her to reduce the credit card debt that she's in. If it wasn't for the CAGR on Bitcoin, then what he's saying isn't really bad advice, because most assets are not going to go up faster than the interest that you're paying on your credit card. But Bitcoin has done that. And so, and understanding what Bitcoin is, you would look at this and you would go, he's an idiot, which was my initial reaction. But let's listen in here.
Your past sins. You f***ed up. Take care of it.
This I respect. He wants her to take care of the irresponsible actions that she's taken on the financial side in her life.
Be an adult. Take care of it. Be an adult.
Now, this I don't agree with. He's basically telling her you got to get rid of all your speculative BS, including Bitcoin in this scenario, and you need to allocate into paying off your debt, basically giving back fiat. Yes, you're not going to be paying the interest on that debt, but also now you don't have anything growing, right? At the end of the day, one of my mentors always told me, because if you need anything that's a discretionary purchase, that is, like something that you're just going to spend on, you want to buy that with your own money, and if you're going to buy anything that appreciates, you want to buy it with debt. You want to buy it with other people's money. You want to buy it with money that's generated from other activities that you do to gain the leverage on the amount of wealth growth that happens. That's obviously the wrong way around for a lot of people, because they can't manage leverage well, and so they get into situations that puts them worse in the hole than they were initially.
Because I also have another account on here, $440.
Yep. Okay, take it out. Take out.
She has another account with, I think, $440 in Bitcoin as well, and he's obviously telling her to sell that.
All this money unless it's in like a Roth IRA or tax advantage deferred account. This makes no sense right now.
Again, his philosophy is very traditional. It's Roth IRA, deferred account, tax deferred account. And he's in a traditional world, he's given her reasonable advice, but he doesn't know what Bitcoin is, and she doesn't know what Bitcoin is.
You don't need this. Dude, I am so about investing, you have no idea. But the interest rate on these credit cards do.
Apparently, he's so about investing that he hasn't realized what Bitcoin is, and that it's the hardest, scarcest asset humanity has ever created, and it's now being institutionalized. But he's so about investing.
Not mathematically justify being in that, especially in a risky asset. The way your account is balanced into Bitcoin, you're like 50.
Risky asset. There you go.
50. It makes no sense. Sell that out. All in.
And he's worried about volatility here, which, you know, from a traditional minded perspective, I completely understand. But he has, you know, no empathy for the financial subjugation most people are in, right? Most people have to take risks in order to make a reasonable amount of money now. Like, the average person is not saving their way to retirement. And unfortunately, what he's talking about is one step away from just saving yourself to retirement.
50 into this, and you're almost halfway done. You're almost halfway done with your credit cards at that point. Well.
Right, so basically she's got, you know, like $5,000 worth of credit card debts. And he's telling her to sell 18, how much is that? 1888 plus $400 or whatever it was. So $2,288 in Bitcoin divided by today's price, so let's say 43. So he wants her to sell 0.05 Bitcoin to pay off 50% of her $5,000 debt. Like,
you're almost 2 cards done, but the other cards are just higher balances. Okay? Will you do that? Will you be an adult? Will you act like you're 27 years old?
See, now here comes the shaming, right? Will you be an adult? Will you this, that, and the other? And we've all faced this. If you're a Bitcoiner, you face this talking to normal people that just don't understand what Bitcoin is. And again, you know, a part of me has empathy for her because she's jumped into something that she doesn't quite understand, but she believes in for some reason, right? But she hasn't taken the time to learn about it. And he's sitting there, and I have empathy for him because everything that he's ever learned in life tells him that, you know, a S&P 500 index fund is the best way to create wealth.
And not 13?
I'm willing to sell Robinhood.
What the?
And I'm willing to sell the 440.
Why not Bitcoin?
Because it's going to go back up.
No, you don't know that.
I do.
You do not know that. Nobody knows that.
That's where faith comes in.
Okay, well, I don't. You're gambling. Okay, well.
So now she's now sounding extra stupid to him because she's used the word faith, and he's looking at this like a rational investor, wondering, this woman's crazy, right? She's thinking about faith. She doesn't understand it. If she had been able to help, you know, educate him on why Bitcoin is the investment that she invested in, then I think this conversation could have gone a little bit more different. But this is why this clip went viral.
Like, I do have money.
He's now associated Bitcoin with gambling because he doesn't understand what it is, and she's doing no good job explaining to him why Bitcoin's in a portfolio.
In Bitcoin, and I hope it goes up. I do not know
Apparently he has money in Bitcoin, but he also doesn't understand what the fuck is going on either.
anything. You do not know anything. One thing I know for a fact, these credit cards are killing you.
Right, so basically what he's trying to tell her is, I don't know what's going to happen to Bitcoin. You don't know what's going to happen to Bitcoin. These credit cards today are murdering you. So what you should do is, instead of taking that debt that you've got that's currently sitting in Bitcoin effectively, right? She didn't take the debt out to buy Bitcoin, but you've got that debt. It's now sitting in Bitcoin one way or another. You should take that off and pay it off because your debt is probably, 20% APR or whatever the hell it is. And Bitcoin is a risky asset and you don't know what's going to happen. So here's the fundamental thinking here from my perspective. Firstly, you should not take debt out unless you have a plan to actually pay it, right? Unless you have a plan to keep up with the payments on a monthly basis, I don't think you should be taking debt out to do anything with, let alone invest in, a volatile asset like Bitcoin. And that's one thing important to realize as well. As soon as the ETFs came out, Bitcoin went from risky to just volatile, right? That's very, very important to understand. It is now an institutionalized asset that went from risky and volatile to just volatile. Secondly, I would implore, Caleb to, if he ever watches this, to actually understand what the fuck he's owning, because clearly he doesn't understand what he's owning. Clearly he doesn't understand what the value of scarcity is. Clearly he doesn't understand what Bitcoin is, how rare it is, how scarce it is, and why it belongs in people's portfolios, why the S&P 500 has performed negatively against M2 money supply, for the last 30 years, why no matter how much your S&P 500 goes up, it's never going to make as much money as owning Bitcoin because of the scarcity of Bitcoin and the infinite printability of the underlying value system, which is the United States dollar. He doesn't understand that. He's looking at going, hey, if I invest $10,000 and I become a millionaire over the period of 40 years, hey, that's all good for me. Unfortunately, Caleb, you're wrong. Right? Because people have followed that process, like my parents, and they've ended up with a property portfolio that they've built over 35 years that's worth 50% less than it needs to be because of the amount of pounds that were printed that didn't go into the UK property market. So there's a lot here that is completely misunderstood, and unfortunately, this is where the boomers that I've been talking about, not the doom and gloom boomers, talking about the amazing boomers, are going to come in and swipe up this girl's Bitcoin, and she's going to be selling her Bitcoin straight to BlackRock, straight to Fidelity, because of the advice of some YouTuber that believes Bitcoin is a risk-on asset and it should be a speculative little flippant investment rather than understanding what the hell it is and how important it is and why BlackRock is institutionalizing this asset versus everything he knows about it, which is basically this is a risky asset, right? So this is going to increase more and more. People like this are going to be out here on YouTube talking about, oh my God, you need S&P 500 index funds. You only need, you need to invest in real estate. You need S&P 500 index funds. You don't need Bitcoin. But the truth is, guys and girls that are doing that traditional finance YouTube bullshit, is that most people have not been in the situation where that makes sense for them. They've been in a situation where they've been financially subjugated. The amount of money that's being printed has gone up faster than the amount of wages, than the amount that wages have gone up, and they haven't been able to keep up with the amount of printing that's happened. And so now they're forced to take speculative positions and even invest in things that they don't understand in order to try and keep up with the amount of money that they want to make and that they deserve to make based on the hours that they're putting in. So it's really the responsibility of those YouTubers to actually understand what Bitcoin is as an asset class so they can start talking about it in a more informed manner. And Caleb looks like a smart guy, right? Because that's exactly the advice I would have told my friends before I understood what Bitcoin was. Like, oh, forget that crazy bullshit. You need to invest in an S&P 500 index fund, real estate, et cetera, et cetera. And I get it. I get why he said what he said, but he's just uninformed here. And he needs to understand what the hell he's talking about, because if the reality is he understood what he was talking about, he would tell her, maybe we should sell some of the other bullshit you've got rather than that Bitcoin, and you can keep that Bitcoin because it is the fastest growing asset. And remember, you're never going to save yourself out of debt. It's just not going to happen. You can pay off those debts and then you're going to start again. But most of the wealthy people that we know in the world, in history, started off with a ton of debt, created that wealth, and then that debt was revolved, right? Now, I understand that most people can't handle that reality, and I'm not saying most people should handle that reality, but that is the reality. Right? If you want to be wealthy, you're going to take other people's money, but you have to take it in a smart way. Obviously, from what I can gather here, she's not taking it in a smart way. You have to take that money in a smart way, and then you have to invest it in a smarter way in order for that to happen. Unfortunately, for most people, Bitcoin is the smartest way to do it because it is generating a higher return than anything else that they could do. So here, it's an unfortunate situation, but that young lady is probably going to have sold her Bitcoin now because of this dude talking on YouTube about her paying off $5,000 worth of credit card debt with 0.05 or 50%, $2,500 of $5,000 of credit card debt because for 0.05 Bitcoin, which in the future could be worth a lot of money based on its scarcity, right? So neither of them understand what the fuck's going on. Neither of them understand what they're owning. She's basically basing it on blind faith. He's basing his Bitcoin investment on pure risk. And this is the world where we're at right now. This is going to pivot as BlackRock jumps into the education space, as Fidelity jumps into the education space. And pretty soon, in 5 years, Caleb is going to be telling people to have a Bitcoin allocation in their portfolio, and it won't be the risk side of their portfolio. It'll be the risk off side of their portfolio, because they'll actually understand what it is. The problem is it'll be too late by then, because Bitcoin price will have appreciated so much. You're just going to have your standard 10 to 25% CAGR, but that will be good enough for most people, right? That will be good enough for most safe portfolios. So the question you have to ask yourself is, am I going to be ahead of the curve here or not? Am I going to be listening to morons like this that don't even understand what they're investing in, let alone talking about it to other people? I don't know, right? But this is what's going on right now, and I wanted to highlight this because it's very, very important. So many people are going to be forced to dump their Bitcoin position because of people like Caleb that also don't understand what the hell they're owning. Or even worse, can you imagine if this was the case? He actually understands what he's owning, but he chooses to say this because it's the right thing to say based on decades of quote-unquote financial portfolio management that's happened. Can you imagine if that was the case? Sounds ridiculous to me. I hope that's not the case, because that would be nefarious beyond belief. So ultimately, this is all going to happen. All of this capital rotation is going to happen. It feeds into everything else I've been saying. Ladies like this, guys like this are going to be selling their Bitcoin and trying to trade it and trying to think this is what it is, not understanding that the scarcity has the true value. So you have to be aware, hyper aware and sensitive why people are saying things to you. And in this scenario, he's saying it to her from the way that I take it, because he doesn't understand what he's holding as well. Bitcoin is no longer a risky and volatile asset. It is a volatile asset. The risk part of it started reducing as soon as BlackRock filed for that ETF application, and that's what's going on in the world. But ultimately, despite all of this, despite how many young people sell their Bitcoin because they watch too many YouTube videos like this guy's, there are ultimately only 3 rules to Bitcoin. Step number 1, you buy Bitcoin. Step number 2, shut the fuck up. And step number 3, you get fabulously wealthy.